Welcome to Below the Line, where we talk about working in Hollywood from the crew perspective. My name is Skid. I was assistant director in Hollywood for the better part of 8 years, and now I'm not. Today, we're talking about Disney's Wizards of Waverly Place, a TV comedy that aired 4 seasons between 2007 and 2012. High-level plot summary: the Russo family are wizards living in New York City and, well, magic. It's probably redundant to say, but hijinks ensue. There are only a handful of reviews at Rotten Tomatoes, so no critics' consensus. But all 5 critics who reviewed season 4 gave it positive marks, so that's technically a 100% score. Mara Eakin from AV Club wrote, "Wizards is pretty damn watchable." Here at Below the Line, we're not focused on what the critics thought, but if your kids are into Harry Potter, they'll probably enjoy this. We're continuing our series of episodes focused on the property department, and my guests today are the prop team from the show. First, Ken Levin, you were the property master for all 4 seasons. Welcome to Below the Line. Glad to have you here, Ken.
Glad to be here.
Also joining us today is Jill Parry, assistant props for all 4 seasons. Jill, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, we're going to talk about the props in detail, but let's first set some context for the show itself. Disney produces a lot of these 30-minute sitcoms, primarily aimed at a younger audience. But tell me what the production was like for you guys on Wizards specifically.
For us, it was interesting coming into a new show. It's always difficult when you start a new show from the first episode, because I've always said the 2 of the more difficult things in production are pilots and the first 10 episodes of any TV show. Because you're establishing characters, you're establishing what their props should look like. You're basically establishing the entire look for the show. And how the props fit into that is incredibly important. Specifically in Wizards, they had their magic wands were really tailored to their personas. And of course, we took our direction from the executive producers. But they all loved their wands, and in particular, as Jill will tell you, Selena loved her wand, and we kind of put that together from different pieces, from different places. I had the actual wand anodized in red, and then we added some jewels and things like that.
I want to talk more about what the cast really loved about the props, but Ken, something you brought up, I want to dive into a little deeper. When I watched the first episode of season 1. It struck me that there wasn't really a lot of setup. And you shared with me that there was a separate pilot that perhaps didn't air or was called something different. What's the background?
Yeah, there was a pilot shot called The Amazing O'Malleys. That was the original name for the show. It never aired. I did see it a couple times. But Disney did an extensive retooling and really wanted to they wanted to really bring in a different flavor to it, and have the family be more of a mixed family. So I believe they recast Maria Canals Barrera as mom. So they gave her that background, and they exploited that background in some of the stories. She was of Hispanic origin, so Quinceañera became one of the episodes, and she was able to expand the show into that kind of realm.
Now, did you guys film this in front of a live audience?
We did, every Friday night. Well, for pretty much every Friday night. Sometimes episodes would get too complicated with effects, and it was just logistically too difficult to try and film an episode in front of an entire audience. But those, to me, were the best. The best nights were always the Friday night shows. And I think Jill will tell you, there was an electric and it's excitement in the air that you can't equal anywhere else.
Yeah, it was over the course of 2 days. So like we would shoot the harder scenes on Thursday and then play those back. But sometimes we were able to do some of the magic live in front of the audience, and the audience would get to see how the magic was done. Me popping in, and then it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun being part of the audience, and the stand-up guys that were there, the warm-up guys, would interact with us on set, and it really brings a lot to the timing and their performance too. The kids loved it. So, and they're all very good at they were all very good at comedic timing too. So, and then of course David DeLuise. So just hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a good show. It was a fun time.
I want to ask you guys some more about capturing the magic for the show. A couple of seasons ago, we did an episode here on Below the Line about Henry Danger, a similarly structured kids show on Nickelodeon.
Right.
And they talked about how visual effects was taking over a lot of the special effects. Now, their years of airing is 2014 to the present. You guys were earlier than that. What was your balance between visual and special effects with the magic you guys were doing on the show?
And looking at the same episodes, season episodes, and then further on, they were definitely a little bit more primitive in our earlier years. I think while the network was feeling the show was getting its footing, there were definitely some corners cut, and I think Jill will admit specifically the chandelier episode. I mean, with all the EPs would cringe. There were certain episodes that everyone would cringe at because the effects just either didn't work or didn't gel with the rest of the story. But they definitely put more into it as we went along, and they got way better. And we put a lot of effort into makeup and costume too. They didn't do a whole lot of effects with that. So from that aspect, yeah, it definitely became more sophisticated, but it still really relied more heavily not on the effects but on the story. And I wanted to touch on what you said before, which was I always felt that the writing was so good on these shows that it brought the adults into the room. And I think that's what some of the key attraction for the show was, is that it didn't just become a Disney show for kids. It really became a Disney show for the family. And they really tried to stress, whereas like someone like Henry Danger was more effects oriented, more action oriented. This was really much more of a family oriented show. And they really tried to keep that connection and flavor throughout the entire 4 seasons.
I think the other thing that struck me in going through the episodes I watched, and I can't claim to have seen every episode of all 4 seasons, but there are also storylines that continue throughout the season, not just blocks of episodes that sort of carry certain characters, but characters leave for a while, characters come back. Like there seems to be an ongoing effort to sort of develop the world around Wizards of Waverly Place, not just delivering 30 minutes of laughs, to your point.
Yeah, the first season was really more about establishing the world and the relationships. Second season really became more about the wizard school and really went more, because that's when Harry Potter just exploded. So they really capitalized on that. And then we were looking at season 3, and that really became more about relationships that the kids were having because they were getting older. They were becoming adults. So everyone was in a relationship at some point or another, and that absolutely drove so much of the storylines. And then they just brought everything else into that. Mason was a werewolf. The other girl, Julie, was pretended to be an angel, but she was really a demon angel. So we brought all of that. They unwound the spool and used everything they had in their arsenal to wind the stories out of that.
Turning our attention to the props, tell me how responsibilities for this area were divided between the two of you on your team.
Generally, the way it works on any sitcom is you have it's a 5-day process. The first day, which for us was usually Monday, you have a production meeting that we both would attend. Generally, the way it would work between Jill and I is all the specific props that were either scripted or required construction or manufacturing, I would handle, and Jill would mainly handle all of like if there was a food was working in a set, Jill would mainly handle that because she's so amazing with food anyway. But she generally would, whatever was a daily thing on the set, Jill would handle. Jill, what do you have to say? Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, we would all both, like, if something had to be manufactured that was easy manufacture for myself and our other assistant to make and be creative and artsy, we handled all that. Ken and I would split up some of the shopping, or as things happen on set, they will change. It won't ever be rewritten into a script, but they request things. And that's my job then I grab it from the room of magic tricks that we have everything under the sun in, or I, give Ken the note, and then he makes sure I have it the next day. So
yeah, there were several times when there were complicated things would come up, and the writers would give me a heads up about something, because there were things that always took, more than just the 2 days. But you have your production meeting on a Monday, rehearse Tuesday, Wednesday. your network run through on Wednesday afternoon, which is kind of like, that's when you finalize everything. And you kind of have to, that Wednesday afternoons were always that you always hang around till the end of the day, till they were finished with network notes, because there was always something that was going to change, and for us, you just hoped the change was that was playing on Friday and not on the Thursday. But we never, it's typically you always run into certain things, and they were very specific about the props that we're using, and we always change things. Like I remember one example, they wanted to have a See and Say toy be a time machine they asked me to find a See and Say, but they wanted the See and Say where you pull a string.
Yeah, the one from like the 70s.
Yeah, which hasn't, but because someone got poked their eye out when they pulled the string too hard,
or
they discontinued it and redesigned the prop. But that's what they want, and that makes for, even though it was harder to get, it made for a better prop and a better gag. So you just persevere, and I actually found a couple on Etsy and managed to get them sent, overnight, during a snowstorm.
The best is though is everybody thinks that they like, oh, I have that. It's like, no, you don't. You do not have that. Your child in 2008 does not have this See and Say. And like they think everybody thinks it's so easy to do our job. Like, what do you mean? You just have to shop. It doesn't always happen like that.
Yeah.
Not everything exists at a Target.
And you always go into anything specific like that. You send out the rule of thumb is you cast the widest net possible. You just go after every single source, and you don't stop till you either have it in your hand or it's confirmed and on its way. The time is so short. There's no time. There's really very, very little margin for error in most cases. Now, when on a show like Wizards, we were very, very tight knit group and a close crew, and that's how we were able to do so much in the little time that we had. I think the longer when you get on a show like that and spend more time, they can tend to become forgiving of things you may not be able to get. But you never stop. You don't stop. You don't stop till you get it. There's just really, failure is never an option.
Or you better be coming up with a really quick plan B.
Yeah, exactly. But you always give them an alternative. You always give them a way out. Wizards is and other shows like Wizards, comedies are different shows because you really have to prop funny. When I was shopping, I didn't just get the first thing that looked good. I was really particular about how is this going to play in front of the audience, and is it going to be funny? I want to bring in something to the EPs, and when they laughed, when I would bring them something, I was like, okay, that was the right choice, and that became easier to do as you get to know your producers and your executive producers. That becomes the bottom line, is the trust that they have in you to procure whatever prop you need. And they know that you're going to have their creative interests in the forefront of your mind when you look for something.
I want to talk more about some of the specific props that you guys remember, but before we move on, Jill, let me ask about something you mentioned earlier. You said you shoot some of the complicated scenes on Thursday and for playback on Friday. Is that to say then you did not have an audience on Thursday, but because of more moving pieces or stunts, you had more time to do those without the distractions, or was there an audience there as well? I wasn't clear.
No, the audience was always on Friday nights, came in like roughly around 4 o'clock. I think we went live at 5. We'd show the previous week's episode for them, and then, get in. And for the most part, like, we would shoot in order from the very first scene to the very last scene, and then they'd speckle in where we shot, the things we shot on Thursday. Those were probably the more detailed. That involved a stunt that maybe somebody had to be rigged up on a wire. I mean, that you have to wait for because those are wardrobe changes, or also makeup changes. So those things, and that just saves time on Friday night because, we want to be going home at some point.
Well, I can bet. Now, and I'm going to jump ahead because when you're talking about the kind of stunt work and such, I'm reminded of some of the episodes I did watch in season 4. It was, Ken, you referenced the plot line earlier where this angel is actually with the Dark Angels. these episodes have wire work. They're flying around. I mean, kids up in the air,
Yeah.
special effects, visual effects in spades. Those seem like really complicated episodes to pull off. I'm surprised even that 2 days would be enough with what I saw.
Those were absolutely, and I think, and even some of those, we might have extended some of the shoot day to a Wednesday even, when it was more complicated like that and really required more time. The wings and all of those wings and things were made by a company called Creature Effects, and they were all practical. And I know the one thing you're thinking of the compass, the moral compass, which is actually which is hanging in my office right now.
Really?
You're always continually pointing at bad.
Yeah, for folks who haven't seen this show, there's a key prop for the plot is the moral compass that can point to good, and everyone in the world is kind of good, or bad, which our worst natures come out. But this prop is not only centered in a lot of the scenes, they also carry it, they move it around. I think they throw it at some point. And tell me more about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And if you look closely at the prop, you'll see that it was designed, it has several openings around the whole edge. And that was because they had to do a physical struggle with it. And the actual prop was very solid. It was made of wood, but because they had to do a physical struggle, I had those built. We had it built like that so they could have a tug of war with it, and it wasn't going to get pulled apart. But in something like that, you'll generally make 2 to 3 of anything that is handled or is going to be reused. You have a priority level of is it a one-off? Is it only going to be used once and seen once, or is it going to be handled and used many times? And that way, if it's something like that, you always have 2 to 3 made at least.
Now, for folks listening at home, if you want to hop to those, I think basically the Angel storyline, at least the part I saw, basically runs season 4, episodes 7 to 10. And yeah, let me ask some more about those. There's another prop in there in that series that struck me, and that's where you had a bag of badgers. Now, the bag itself is moving around as if there were badgers in it. I don't imagine that there was an animal wrangler on set since we don't see those badgers, but what kind of effort goes into a prop like that?
Well, that would be a combination where we work with special effects. In our case, it was Justin Krause, and we would find that we would get the right bag, and then we'd hand off it, whatever we had, to him, and then he would take care of building a rig inside the bag, and everything he did was remote controlled, so he would be able to control it from offset. And so something like that we did with Justin. We always worked very closely with special effects, depending on whatever prop it was.
Yeah, they fixed everything for us.
That they did.
Yeah, they're definitely we need them.
Like Wizards, you have someone that had to be there full time because he was always working. They were always something that had to be built for either a week or two down the road that they would be working on.
And it looked to me like, yes, there are visual effects, some of the magic effects, or where they're flying, or they're doing some green screen work, but it doesn't look like a lot of the practical effects are pushed to visual effects, or that they're doing a lot of fixing in post. It seemed like there was a lot of practical work being done in each episode, the ones I saw.
Oh yeah, that we tried to do. I think doing it practical was the first order. Doing anything as a visual effect was kind of the last resort for us and the production team. We always wanted to do, even if you look at the first episode, there's a scene where David Henry opens a magazine and flyer and little inserts come flying out. Well, that was a practical effect. I mean, I made I don't know how many 200, 300, 400 little insert cards, and Justin created a rig that fired them out. But there was a combination of that and the magazine. So that would be a combination of a visual effect and a practical effect.
So what's funny, on set 2 seasons later, we something where they were up there rigging above that set, the kitchen set of the restaurant, and all of a sudden one of those flyers flew down, like kind of just wafted down into the sea, and we're like, wow, that was little things like that would happen every now and again.
When you did that, how many takes did you have to do on that magazine launching inserts? Because I know that could be a lot to reset, it looked like.
Yeah, we probably did it 2 or 3 times, but
At least two.
at least
Two.
definitely at least 2, at least 2 times.
So ready for 3. On those kind of practical effects and gags like that, we are always ready for 3.
Yeah, that's
So,
the minimum. 3 is the minimum. 3 is the minimum of something,
yeah.
of anything that you do, any gag.
Well, opening up the conversation, what other props strike you guys as memorable after all these years?
God, so many.
I don't remember the episode, but I remember because I have a picture of myself with it, the giant pumpkin pie. It was something like they planted, they did something out on the balcony and they were planting, and we had a giant pumpkin that Max like moved into or something, and then at the very end there was a giant pumpkin pie, and that was made outside in from Creature Effects.
Yeah.
So.
I remember that very well. There were so many favorites. I really enjoyed when David Henry Justin was doing his monster hunting. We had to have a lot of stuff made for him to do that. And one of my favorite things was there was a prop that was the monster detector. And it was a box that we had made, and it was I really loved it. It was gorgeous. It had lights, and it was action. It was a big action prop, and did a lot of things. So things like that were my favorite props. The complicated ones that that had a lot of lights and bells and whistles. Were always fun to make and produce.
And then one of my favorite ones was so low, like just low key. Was I took a pair of I wanted 3D glasses. And I just took a pair of glasses and some D's, letter D's, and the 3 D's across the glasses. And it was just so kitsch. It was just a play on words. And it was just the simplest thing I've ever made in my life. I actually had them for years. They've been sitting in my office for years. Finally, they kind of crumbled.
That's the thing about props on a show like that is, Jill's very creative, and I love to create as well, obviously as well. So you have fun with it, and I think that's really where the crux of it becomes. Building props for a show like that is such a pleasure and so much fun and hard. I mean, this is we work very, very hard to make those things, and it was very appreciated very appreciated by the powers that be and the executive producers. But as I go back, as I said before, it's really about that trust. So they let me have a very, very free reign about the stuff that we created. And I often looked at the script as a guideline, and then they would say something in the script and I would go, okay, we'll prove that. But if I found something better, I had no second thoughts about showing them something that I thought was better than something they had written. And sometimes they rejected it, and sometimes, but more often than not. And I'll remember specifically, there was an episode where Austin, or Jake, has a bowling ball. I can't remember specifically what it was, but I went and found a translucent bowling ball with a skull in the middle. And they loved that, and it wasn't what they wanted, or it wasn't what they asked for, but it fit so well into the scene that it was a natural, and I think those are the moments that I really eat up. Those are the moments when of course, when you shine, when they like something and you get those accolades, that makes it fun. That really makes it fun for you. It makes it fun for them, and just it makes the whole show be easy. Now there were other very few times that you produced something and it wasn't what they wanted. And I again specifically, there was a giant towards the end. I think it was the 4th season. We had a giant orb. It was this giant clear orb. Jill will remember this. And again, they wanted it to be translucent. So what I had to do was I got a plexiglass sphere, probably about 2 feet in diameter, and we filled it with silicone. And it was supposed to be clear, but as the silicone hardens, it becomes opaque. That wasn't what they wanted. But we made it work. We found a different way. So nobody could have foreseen that coming, because with that large amount of silicone solidifying, nobody knew that was going to happen to it. But you make okay, so this is what we have. How can we make this work for what you need? And we did. We ended up doing some colored lights beneath it, and it looked very cool. And in the end, it was great. So those are some of the challenges that we face. You have to make lemonade out of lemons.
Now, you guys were both there all 4 seasons. You spoke earlier, Ken, about it being a tight crew. Tell me a little bit about atmosphere on set. Was there continuity in most of the departments with folks sticking around, or was there turnover in certain areas?
There were some, not a lot. that I remember. Jill, what would you say?
No,
that there was?
I mean, I think our costume designers changed. Worked in the costume department, changed a little bit, but not much. Like some of the set people stayed. Hair and makeup were pretty much always the same. There might be one or two that came and went. Camera were all the same. Sound and Grip Electric were the same.
Yeah.
No, it was a good show to be on. I mean, we had a couple different assistants over years, but Ken and I were the staples who stuck around the whole time.
Yeah, that crew centered around our line producer Greg Hampson, and I had worked with Greg beginning in 2004 on a show called Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide for Nick, and that's where he and I developed a relationship. And he built this crew, and he really, when I knew Wizards was coming, and actually at that time I had been asked to do the last season of Hannah Montana. At the same time, Greg was starting to put this together, and I actually turned Hannah Montana down to start Wizards. And obviously, it was a good decision because we went 4 years on, and that was the last season of a show, and I chose to go on the first season of a new show. And I'm glad I made that decision because I might not have gone on to Wizards if it wasn't for that. But the cohesiveness of that crew was definitely due to Greg Hampson. And Greg is a very low key guy. And he really kept a good handle on the crew. He let us do our thing and got involved when it was important, but did not micromanage us in any way. And I think that's a big thing when producers start to micromanage you end up resenting it because it's like, I know how to do my job and please let me do it. And that's really what occurred there. The attitude on set, it was just, every day was a big joke. I mean, we laughed so much every day. Between Victor Gonzalez, our first AD guy Distad, and everyone else, we just made for such a wonderful atmosphere, and everyone wanted to be there. I mean, it was like I don't really recall anyone ever being bitchy or whiny about it because it was so much fun, and the cast made it too. The cast were so nice and so much a part of the crew that it made a cohesive unit out of everyone. And that's why shows like that become popular, I believe, more so than just the fact that it's a Disney show. It worked because it showed what a good time we were all having. I mean, the actual show, when you watched it, you had fun because we had fun making it.
Talk to me more about the cast. I think something that's notable about these shows with kids in the principal leads, you see them grow up year to year. I'm sure that's both interesting and good for the show, but also a challenge at the same time.
Oh, yeah. Jill, we'll have more of an onset, but Selena was interesting to watch grow because if you watch that first episode, she's so young. And then as it went on, you watched her relationship with Justin Bieber, which was very much in the forefront of the news. And Justin Bieber would come on to set. He would be on set, almost once a week. Jill, isn't that right? He was there.
I don't really recall it was that much, but he was there.
He was there. Taylor Swift would come by.
Yeah. I think didn't Ed Sheeran come by when he was just starting out, and we didn't know who he was, and he was hanging out with Taylor, and they came to visit. So it was kind of like, who are these people? But it's her friends. That's the way it is.
Yeah, but I remember, and then there was that. But watching Selena grow,
but there were growing pains, of course, as with any kid growing up, and you think about the stories we heard about the Brady Bunch, and they would fight, and this was the same thing. These kids, they had little spats here and there, and some people had good days and some people had bad days. That we would hear like David had 2 kids and Maria has 2 kids, and we'd hear little things about what's going on with their lives. So, and
that's right.
You kind of kept your mouth shut and you walked away.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get involved in the person. We saw what went on,
You listened and and that's what you take. Because of course, with all your friends, you want to vent, you need to vent, and you're at this safe space. So it was a safe space for them. I mean, Selena and I had a great relationship on set. I would give her props, or I'd hand off things to her. And one of the things I always got a little, thanks, Mom. because I was sort of like a little on-set mom to her, just kind of, and so was every other crew member. We all, were there. We protected those kids.
Yeah.
They were good.
Yeah.
I mean, I was constantly scolding David Henry. Even to this day, I've teased him. And because I'm, how he's done well with his career and he's making movies. I teased him way back when. And so when you start making your own and directing and producing your own stuff, you're going to remember me, because all he would do is pick up and play. He had little, he'd just constantly pick up a prop and move it around on me, or just a set dressing piece. And I said, that's going to bug you one day when you're sitting in an editing bay, putting your own thing together. And he didn't get it, or he did, but he would, we just had a fun banter.
As you'll attest to, Skid, a film set's a very myopic place. You have, as an AD, as a former AD, I mean, your head has to be in everyone's soup. But we focus on the things that we need to, and how we have to interact, what our needs might go into other departments for. We might need something from lighting, or something from, I might need the grips to rig something, or effects or sound. We might have a prop that's going to create a sound problem for something. We have to figure out how we can ease their pain. And that's really what it was. It really was more about that collaborative effort, and how do we make our department work with every other department. And when that happens, you have a good crew. When people want to work together and want to be together, it makes it that much easier. And it was always that. I mean, every single week was some conundrum that we would all sit down and figure out together.
It reminds me of a specific sequence also in the 4th season, I think episode 3, where there's a robe that's about to be very, very damaged. And the damage, spoiler alert, I suppose, if folks are watching it fresh, but there's paint, there's cream pies, there's a box of mud, there's the garbage disposal.
I remember
every aspect of that. I mean, it's got to involve stunts as well. It's moving around. That's a good example of all these departments having to work together. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was when something like that you have, it's really, since it's a wearable thing, it starts with wardrobe. So, once you figure out what the magic, and I remember that it was the magic robe, it was the magic robe, I can't remember the specific name, but it was the magic robe
family
that
wizard
belonged
robe.
to, that what?
The family wizard robe.
Right, the family wizard robe. So that's the kind of thing that you go into with multiples. So you'll have the pristine one, and then we probably had 4 or 5 others that were pre-done in those other stages. And then, of course, by the time it gets to the garbage disposal, that's another one that we've just taken and just ripped to shreds. And for that kind of thing, we would try to shoot it in order. For the most part, we did shoot in order, so that you don't have to take something that you've ripped to shreds and make it whole again, because that's always kind of our worst nightmare when we go backwards like that. So something like that would have been done in several different stages, and then the actual gags of throwing the stuff on him.
And that scene where it gets messed up, that was definitely something that was shot the day before.
Yeah.
So, because that was a pretty well choreographed scenario with, each person walks in with the element that he's going to get on the rope, and then the steps of which thing he went into. And I actually rewatched that one, and I was like, wow, everything walked in it perfectly and set down. I mean, the comedy is right there of all those. Harper walking in with the pies, Selena, Alex walking in with her painting, and then Max walks in with, here's the box, and then that's the character of Max. It's just, you don't ever put any thought into what he was doing with a box of mud. So.
Yeah, right. He was such he was kind of a random foil in a lot of ways. They would throw Max in.
He was our Joey from Friends.
Speaking of Max, I want to ask you guys about a plotline 4th season, not specifically related to props, but for about 6 episodes, Max is replaced by Maxine, and a little girl plays, I think Bailey Madison comes in.
I love that kid.
And Jake Austen's nowhere to be found. Was there a behind-the-scenes story about why she came in for that period of time?
Yeah, he went off to do, Jake went off to do For the Love of Dogs, the movie. And they let him go do that. And that's how they wrote, and they wrote around it. And that's how accommodating they were. But I think wasn't For Love of Dogs also a Disney movie?
I don't remember.
I don't remember, but they were pretty forgiving about that, and that happened with other cast members from time to time. Not as much, not as long as that, but yeah. But there were times when they had other cast members would had to go off or had some other commitment. But in that particular case, that was the reason.
Well, while we're talking about the actors, what were their favorite props?
Well, like, Selena loved her wand. Like, she just, whenever I would hand it off to her for scenes, she loved that. I think they all definitely they thought that, they were fun. But, like, a lot of times I would make extra food. If there was a scene in the cafe or the restaurant, the deli, sub shop, whatever, I would ask the director, be like, what time I'm eating something. I would actually ask Jake, or I asked Liam, what do you want? What do you want me to buy, or what do you want me to make? Because I had time on that show.
We will always try to be very accommodating to the actors.
I can't remember an exact prop like that was. Oh, well, Selena left her phone. I remember, because this was before smartphones. We were doing more like flip or the slide up phones. So I would bedazzle them. Then all of a sudden the iPhone came out like towards the third and fourth season, and I was like, oh, we better get with the times.
Yeah, and when I remember David Henry got his first iPhone. He was the first one to get his iPhone. It was just everyone was like, oh,
yeah.
Cool.
So.
But to bring back, they loved it. They did like their wands a lot, and what we did at the very end of the show is I had shadow boxes made for all the cast and mounted their wands in the boxes with a plaque, that said Wizards, their character name, and so hopefully they still have those.
They were very appreciative of that too. It was they thought that was the neatest thing, because they also, like, Selena kept saying, there's only one of my wand, right? I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
Like 10. On each one, we had at least 10 over these, because there was.
Well, they were breaking them. They were always doing something with them. Remember the one with Jake when he was trying to be attracted to the wizard, the snooty wizards group. He took his wand and put it over his head with a wire, like the arrow going through the head.
I did see that.
So we had to do things. So we would always be doing something with their wands, like that, or they would sit on them, or they would break them, or So we were always constantly making new wands or reworking old ones. And
we made a wand cell phone for Uncle Zebo,
right.
Jeff Garland's character.
Right.
And it was on a little elastic string. It was just a plain wooden dowel one, and it snapped open. So it was like a so that was a fun one with a little string on it that he could pull out of his pocket and it would pop open.
The wrap gift, I'm showing you this now, Skid. We did a yearbook for all 4 seasons. So, it's got pictures of every all the stuff. So whenever I need to reminisce about the show, I pull it out. It was a wonderful, wonderful wrap gift that they made for the crew.
That is a nice gift. That's very impressive. Let me talk to you guys about how the show ended. It struck me that the last 2 episodes that make up the finale, they came out in January of 2012 after a winter break, and somewhat sudden. I guess on one level, I wondered if you guys knew when season 4 was going on that it was going to be the last season.
I think we knew.
Yeah, we did. We were very lucky in the 4th season of Wizards because we got extended. Our season got extended. We were given more episodes at the end. I think we were expecting to do 22, and we ended up doing, I believe, 29, which for a Disney show was pretty impressive. I mean, at that point in time, very few shows had gone to 4th seasons on Disney, and a lot of that has to do with the rate structure. But we did know Wizards was going to end. We didn't know how it was going to end. We knew that there was, because the 4th season overall became the competition. Alex had dropped out, and then she decided to get back in, was convinced to get back in. And so it was what became the whole overriding arc of that season, was leading up to the Wizard competition and at the very end. But we did not get that. We didn't know what was going to happen till I think the day before. We weren't given that last page of shooting till the day before, and we all of course had to sign NDAs and things like that, so that we didn't share. But we did know it was going to come to end. Absolutely.
And did you guys film those episodes immediately up next to the other episodes that you had shot, and just it was a scheduling hiatus over the holidays, over December into January, or did you have longer prep or more time for those last two episodes, which I watched those as well. They're very complex for this show.
Yeah, we didn't have audiences for those episodes. They were shot more traditional, there's a difference between sitcom and single camera, as you well know. A 3-camera show is more like a play. Those were shot in a more, even though we did use multi-cameras, they were definitely shot more single camera. We had longer shoot days because you're right, they were more complex. And I think I know we had built other sets. We had used other stages to build the set.
Yeah.
To build the cave set, the whole cave set and the whole maze set. We built on the different stages. And they put a lot more money into those episodes, and a lot more time. They really wanted this. I think at that point, even Disney had really was very enamored with the show, and certainly was very much had groomed Selena to this point. And obviously, at this point, Selena was a huge star, and they knew it. And they gave it what it was worth. They put the money in, and they gave it the time that it needed, and attention they needed to do a good finale. And which they succeeded. I mean, that was such a melancholy day. And that last day of shooting was just, it was wild. It's, when the last shoot day of anything like that really has a lot of mixed feelings about how you spent 4 years working on this project, with these people and creating things. And, I know I did some of my best work on that show. And, had my own things going on behind the scenes, in addition to that, but, we all pull through, and that's what it was. It was a family. I mean, it was a family in the true sense of the word, of a film family in the true sense of the word.
Really appreciate you both coming on and talking to us about Wizards of Waverly Place today. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. It was fun.
It was. Thank you.
Listeners, I'd love to hear what you thought of the episode. You can send an email to skid, S-K-I-D, at belowtheline.biz. That's B-I-Z. I also appreciate your feedback via iTunes, where your ratings and comments really do help us reach new listeners. And Facebook, where, for your visual entertainment, I post photos and other behind-the-scenes materials at Podcast Below the Line. Finally, you can follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram. It's at Pod Below the Line. Thanks to Curtis Fye for our music and John Wan for our logo. The logo is available on t-shirts, mugs, and stickers at redbubble.com. Thanks for listening. The Prop Series continues, and I've got some folks coming together to discuss the industry's COVID-19 response. I'm not sure what will be up next week, but I hope you'll join us either way. Be safe out there.